Good evening, everybody. My name's Tanner Walsh, and I am a junior here at DePauw. I'm a political science major, econ minor, and I will be introducing our speaker tonight. So, Jeanette Pope began teaching at DePauw in 2002 as an assistant professor, received tenure and was promoted to associate professor in 2009 and was recently promoted to the rank of professor. Her interest in geology and environmental issues was first sparked in classes at Bucknell University, where she completed an undergraduate thesis involving water chemistry. She discovered her passion for teaching while working on an MS degree in geochemistry at the Colorado School of Mines, and she continued her studies at Virginia Tech, where she received her Ph.D. While at DePauw, she has helped develop classes for the environmental geoscience major, including environmental geology, introduction to environmental science seminar, geochemistry, and applied hydrogeology. She has also taught a number of first-year seminar and winter term courses on environmental topics, including a new course this semester entitled Campus Sustainability 101. Her passion is sustainability, which she defines as protecting and promoting environmental quality and social justice. We will obviously be hearing about that tonight. Since 2013, she has been serving as DePauw's faculty sustainability coordinator, which means that she works closely with Anthony Barada, the director of sustainability, and a number of offices across campus to advance environmental education and stewardship on campus. Additionally, she has successfully helped develop 2 proposals for external funds that have been used to support sustainability activities on campus. A $62,500 grant from the Indiana Office of Energy Development and a $231,000 grant from the Great Lakes College Association. In 2014, she was recognized with DePauw's Oxnam Service Award by then President Brian Casey. Though she had previously mentored 17 different DePauw students on summer research projects investigating water quality concerns like agricultural runoff and acid mine drainage, her current research interests now focus on campus sustainability. She's currently in the process of preparing different manuscripts for publication in academic journals, entitled A Decade of Sustainability at DePauw, Lessons and Trends from a Liberal Arts Campus. She told me to tell you that she is thrilled to be here, and so grateful that you are all taking the time to engage with this important and hopeful topic. As a part of the Office of Alumni Engagement Virtual Alumni College Webinar Series, please welcome Professor Jeanette Pope.
Thank you. And thank you for the students from Campus Sustainability 101, colleagues, other students coming out tonight, and of course for all the alumni and former students who are tuning in this evening. I really want to thank those of you who have contacted me or sent in questions before the talk. I look forward to addressing those as well as getting to know you better in the future. Additionally, I want to take a moment for a special personal thank you to longtime friends of the family, Virginia and Clark Hayes, who are watching tonight, because they have known me since before I was born. They were both in the alumni of the class of 1964. And I would be very remiss if I didn't also take a moment to say hi to Kathy Saxton Jers, also with the class of 1964. So, hi, Mom. This evening, it is my very great pleasure to share with you some of the work and changes that have been happening at DePauw over the last 9 years. I say 9 years because the Office of Sustainability was created on September 15th, 2008, when Carol Steele, married to DePauw alumnus Bob Steele, was appointed its first director. Of course, such an important occurrence didn't just happen. DePauw's move to more formally incorporate the values of sustainability into the ways that we think and live was founded on the efforts of numerous students, faculty, and staff. However, I've chosen that date because it represents a particular moment in university history when a number of different activities coalesced into what we might now call a movement. I invite you to consider this image as a starting point because it represents a vantage on our university that is simultaneously familiar and somewhat strange. We recognize the brick architecture, of course, and the familiar image of Royal West Library, but somehow the perspective seems a little different. Still, all those who have studied, lived, and loved on this campus will recognize that this is DePauw. Similarly, what I'm going to discuss this evening might be familiar, or it might seem a little strange. But I hope that as you consider this different perspective, you will recognize the same DePauw that you know. The same, but a little different, as we are now the same, but a little different than who we were as college students. So, to get to the subject matter of the evening, we need to ask a fundamental, basic question. What exactly is sustainability? Now, unfortunately, there's no accepted term universally accepted term for this in academic circles, despite what Webster says. So, lecture's over. Just kidding. Despite the fact that this term is contested by different scholars, we can still develop a shared understanding for what it means, and that's what I'd like to do tonight. But before I get to that, I'd like a moment to pause to consider the why of it all. And so I invite you to consider this image. There are so many reasons why I love this photo. Its stunning beauty, the amazing detail, the magical properties of hydrogen bonds, and of course, the wonder of the natural world. I use this image in a number of my classes to discuss the cohesive and adhesive properties of water. And in case you're interested, cohesion is the hydrogen bonds holding the water together, small droplets together, and adhesion is what happens when larger droplets will wet the surface. And I bring this image tonight to demonstrate something else. Ingenuity. Isn't it amazing that society has developed the technology to capture such a small feature and magnify it with crispness such that we can make out the fine details? And isn't it amazing that a photographer can capture such a sight and put it out on the internet such that we can all share in the wonder? And of course, aren't ants amazing in their ingenuity and industrious nature? This ant isn't capturing water for herself. She is engaging in the process of water harvesting by bringing the drop back to her colony. And in doing so, she participates in the same life-sustaining activity as millions of human women around the world who also labor to provide water for their families. In many ways, this image speaks to the values of sustainability because the ant is doing what all of us are trying to do: capture and use resources necessary for life. However, unlike the ants, the changes that humans are inflicting on our natural world, just by going about our daily lives, is having a tremendous negative consequence on global ecosystems and also human societies. I'm not going to get into all of the really scary and terribly serious environmental problems that we are facing, because I think that you're already aware. Whether you remember the Chihuahua River catching fire in 1969, the concerns about DDT and other pesticides brought forward by Rachel Carson, toxic chemicals bubbling up in the residential neighborhoods of Love Canal, New York, the leak from a Union Carbide plant in Bhopal, India, that released 25 tons of toxic gas and killed over 15,000 people, the Exxon Valdez or Deepwater Horizon oil spills that dumped trillions of gallons of oil into the world's oceans, or the recent lead poisoning of children just because they consumed public drinking water. Each of us can remember the times of acute environmental crisis. Further, most of you know that these examples are only the tip of an iceberg when it comes to environmental challenges. And unlike the real icebergs that are melting at unprecedented rates due to human-induced climate change, our metaphorical icebergs of problems continue to grow. The reality is, we know that there are problems, and for students at DePauw today, they have known about these problems their whole lives. It is important to share that I consider myself an environmentalist before I even knew what the term meant. However, I have also, so therefore I'm deeply concerned about the deteriorating health of the planet. However, I have also learned that just talking about problems isn't particularly helpful. Further, it's not very much fun at parties. What I want to do now, and what I want to help to empower my students to do, is to work towards solutions. And that's where sustainability comes in. For most scholars, the term sustainability dates back to in 30 years, the release of the United Nations World Commissions on Environment and Development of what has come to become known as the Brundtland Report, named after Commission Chair and former Prime Minister of Norway, Gro Harlem Brundtland. However, what is discussed in this report is not actually sustainability, but rather sustainable development that was defined as the development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. Now, I happen to have my copy of this text from when I was a first-year student at Bucknell University. And I have to assume that this is where I first heard the term sustainability. But I have to admit, I don't remember. And I think that it might be that my lackluster affection for this term is that it's somewhat vague and unexciting. Many, many scholars have quipped, who wants to seek a life that can be merely sustained? However, it's with the knowledge that sustainability as a term is not necessarily exciting that I started out with that image of the ant and with the wonder of the natural world. Because when truly embraced, the values of sustainability are not exclusively about preserving or not just about getting by. They are about joy and wonder and the ability to thrive. Excuse me for just a second. So, to differentiate between sustainability and sustainable development and sustainability, it helps to consider the conceptualized three systems that need to operate in harmony for humans and animals and plants to thrive. So the first system is about human relationships, represented by a sphere called equity, because our very notion of democracy and human decency relies on the fundamental understanding that all humans are equal. And while we can recognize cases where society has failed to live up to this lofty goal, we nevertheless recognize that sustainability is about the world we want, not the world we have. The second set of systems is about human activities and exchange of goods and service and is represented by the sphere called economy. I should note that economy is also based on human relationships, of course, but I'm considering it as a separate sphere because it also represents means, as in a person's ability to achieve the desired goods and services. It is a guiding principle of sustainability that healthy societies need healthy economies to support healthy relationships. Finally, we have the Earth systems that are represented by a sphere called environment. In considering sustainability, it is important to remember that the environment, or Earth, is more than physical or biological entity. There are numerous systems like weather, or the water cycle, or even plate tectonics that are part of our life support system. Further, I put this sphere on top of the other spheres because we have ample evidence from science, as well as our own intuition, that human health is fundamentally linked to environmental health. As we begin to consider the intersections of these three sets of systems, we can develop some terms for how they overlap when the systems are working in optimal order. When both the economy is turning in a way that supports people but doesn't overexploit resources, we have a situation that's viable. And when human relationships operate with environmentally safe space, we have a situation that is tolerable, as in allows humans to continue to live. For much of human history, societies thought mostly about these two intersections as people first sought out food and shelter and then developed into more complex systems that allowed trade. Further, over the course of the history, there has been a movement towards a healthy balance between the spheres of economy and equity such that we have improved social justice, though this clearly hasn't reached the ideal we would all like to see. But as the intersection core of this system, where we place sustainability, which we define as approaches that guide us towards long-term, approaches that strive towards long-term goals that will create a thriving economy that supports social justice and human happiness and wellness for all, and itself is supported by a biologically diverse, inorganically rich environment. Of course, that's a lot to think about. But at DePauw, we are doing more than thinking about these kinds of approaches. We are putting them into action, too. So it would take me way too long to go through all of the individual activities sponsored by our Office of Sustainability over the last 9 years. However, I invite you to explore our excellent website depicted here, where you can learn more details. Also, you can like us on Facebook. So instead of going through the chronological history of change, I'd like to instead present how DePauw is integrating sustainability into our culture to support our mission. So sustainability at DePauw creates opportunities for student-driven environmental initiatives, educates campus about how the environment and its long-term health intersects with social well-being, supports institutional initiatives that demonstrate the university's commitment to environmental stewardship. And it is these three intersecting sets of activities that create the framing for the work of students, faculty, and staff on campus. So what I'd like to do is highlight some of the recent activities that are in each one of these categories to give a flavor of what's happening on campus. First and foremost, the goal of sustainability programs is to support DePauw's academic mission and create leaders that the world needs now. As such, our most important initiative is to empower students, and I'm pleased to say that most, if not all, of the programs I'm going to discuss this evening were either started by student initiatives or created through student partnerships. And our flagship program is the Sustainability Leadership Program. Through both paid and volunteer hands-on opportunities, students are equipped to navigate complex challenges and create lasting change. With over 60 students participating in weekly small and large group meetings, SLP is the largest program of its kind in this country. This slide shows a few of the types of ways that DePauw students are engaged in improving campus and improving the world. So in the upper left, we have a group who is at the DePauw farm, which I'll discuss in greater detail in just a little bit. In the lower left, we have the Tailgate Recycling Initiative, which is part of DePauw's interest in pursuing the very challenging goal of a zero-waste campus. And on the right, another feature from our zero-waste campus is the DePauw Garage Sale, which goes to support the Thrifty Tiger, which is our on-campus thrift shop that is student-run and student-managed. And students, rather than having their materials go out to the dump, they can exchange on campus and can get continued life. So it's as we think about the classic triangle of reduce, reuse, recycle, this is, of course, the reuse part of that. The other thing that's really great about the SLP program is that they have a lot of fun. And so this is a very, very nice organization that brings like-minded students together and empowers them in ways that they can work on projects that are changing our campus. Another brilliant program that works in close partnership with the Sustainability Leadership Program and falls into the second objective about educating campus is the Environmental Fellow Program, which is a 4 years honors program like Media Fellows or Management Fellows that is for students who are interested in studying the interdisciplinary environmental challenges facing humanity today. It is designed to complement any major that DePauw has to offer. Through the program, students choose from environmentally themed courses and attend special lectures, luncheons, and seminars. Further, they're invited to attend special events with our distinguished speakers. My favorite of this was the small group conversation that they had with Nobel Prize winner Jane Goodall. And I realize that image is a little pixely when we put it up on this scale, but it was so cool. So I had to include it this evening. And Jane Goodall was on campus several years ago to deliver an oven lecture. A particularly exciting part of our program is that in addition to coursework, students also complete an environmental practicum, or series of applied learning experiences like internships, research, or independent study. For example, Madeline Pichetta, pictured in the upper right, interned with the World Wildlife Federation in Washington, D.C., and Molly Madden, featured in the middle of the screen, did research with Indianapolis Prize winner Patricia Wright in Madagascar. With respect to our third initiative, there are many, many wonderful stories to tell about how sustainability supports institutional initiatives that physically demonstrate our commitment to environmental stewardship. In the interest of time, I just want to focus my remarks on one campus project, which is called the Campus Energy Master Plan, or CEMP. DePauw is committed to smart energy systems and energy efficiency because doing so is ethically correct, but also because it makes smart business sense. Saving energy saves money. Additionally, spending money on lighting or heating means that these funds aren't available to support the student academic experience. Essentially, being unsustainable with energy is the same thing as robbing students, which obviously isn't consistent with our mission. Therefore, under the leadership of Chris Huff and Warren Wilson and the Facilities Management Group, we're pursuing an ambitious plan to reduce total energy use, reduce the use of fossil fuels in particular, and support renewable energy. The images on this slide depict several elements of that. In the top is just a screenshot that shows the timeline of our, as well as a few of the features for the actual ways that we're going to go about implementing the master energy plan. And in the lower left-hand corner, which is, of course, an image from of the basketball courts from the Neal Fieldhouse, you can see lights reflected. And I'm using that image because this is where we applied the grant from the Indiana Department of the Indiana Office of Energy Development, which Chris and I applied for to get a $62,500 grant that in which all the lights of this the field house were replaced with those old inefficient lights were replaced with high efficiency LED lighting, as well as automated remote control, or where the system can be optimally managed from within facilities. Something that's particularly exciting about this is that it reduces our total, it saves about $10,000 in energy per year. And I should point out that DePauw has a rather hefty energy bill. We pay over $3 million in energy for lighting, heating and cooling, and water use on our campus. And so every way that we can try to reduce that energy use is not only good for the environment, it's good for the bottom line. And finally, in the lower right-hand corner, we have some solar panels. And those solar panels are not yet on campus, but it is our hope as part of the Campus Energy Master Plan to install some on the roof of the Tennis and Track Center. And so these particular solar panels, however, are at Chris Hoffa's home. And he is actually not in that photo, but it's those are DePauw students who were part of the sustainability leadership program to visit. So we're particularly pleased to have a residential expert that's helping with these issues. Finally, I'd like to talk about a program that integrates all of the three initiatives, and that is the campus farm. So as we think about student leadership opportunities, academic learning, and physical projects, the farm, which was started in 2013, brings all of these together. And it's really important to thank the alumni, Rick Neville and Jamie Gates, who helped provide funds to launch this, as well as Carol Steele, because there's really she did a lot of the early grunt work to establish the farm. But it was the students and their ideas, their vision that is the reason why this project exists. And so each year, the farm grows and sells thousands of pounds of food, which is sold to Bon Appetit, which is the food service on campus. And then that food is now served in Hoover Dining Hall. And so we have nice, fresh, locally sourced food systems. Additionally, classes like the biology class that's using the cornfield, or humanities and arts classes that are using the farm as for inspiration, or even classes in the social sciences that discuss various aspects of the politics of agriculture or labor issues, have used the example of the farm, and students have gone to the farm and connected with that in their classes. And we also have hundreds of students who volunteer, or, and I should say DePauw students as well as community students, Greencastle students, who come out to the farm. And we're particularly pleased to have Mallory Imhoff, who's pictured there on the right, as our new farm manager. Actually, she's not that new anymore, but I still say new because she's only been here, it's been less than a year, and she's already over tripled the foot traffic to the farm, and increased the programming, and including this farm stand. So we now have DePauw Farm Fridays, in which there's a local stand for selling fruits and vegetables to students on campus as a way to both promote wellness and healthy eating, as well as the farm. So we're very, very thrilled about that. And I should say her full title. Mallory is the campus farm manager and assistant director of sustainability. And probably what's the most exciting news in the last 9 years for sustainability, we're really thrilled to announce that in next year we will be opening the ULLEM Campus Farm and Center for Sustainability. This was made possible by a very generous gift from Scott and Beth ULLEM. So what we have here are pictures from our current farm, and what you can see is that the students are it's more than about, it's growing food, it's about learning the principles of agriculture, yes, but it's also about connecting with community and connecting with the earth and connecting with the very nature of nutrients and of life. And so one of the pieces of feedback that we often get from students about the farm is that they just enjoy being out there. And so what's going to happen in the spring is we are going to be opening a farm at our new site. It's literally going to allow us to grow because right now our current site is about an acre, and we have 3 acres initially for the future, as well as an ability to expand to up to 17. And so in support with the Center for Sustainability, which is going to be a building on site for programming and learning, we think that this is going to be a very special initiative that's really going to develop a number of different learning opportunities for students, as well as support healthy living in Greencastle. So, in closing, I want to return to the broad focus of sustainability, and that is addressing the very challenging environmental problems that we are facing. I believe that this quote from a recent academic paper in the journal Science, which is probably one of the most prestigious academic journals, because indeed addressing global environmental problems will require fundamental advances in our ability to address such issues as the behavior of complex, self-organizing systems, as well as the responses, some irreversible, of nature-society systems to multiple and interacting stresses. The challenge facing society is huge. However, when there are great challenges, there are also great opportunities. And something that I know that we all know is that DePauw is excellent at preparing students to face these challenges, to thrive in these challenges, and work to create a better tomorrow. I think that every one of us can think of some reason why we need to collectively change our current thinking and behaviors about the ways that we're living on this planet. This is my reason. So as I think back to our opening question, what is sustainability? I really don't have a precise definition, but I know that it involves imagination and innovation, courage, compassion, and above all, love for our children. And when I say our children, I mean our collective children, including our own offspring, as well as nieces and nephews, godchildren, grandchildren, great-grandchildren. Additionally, I invite us to think of the children beyond our family. For every single person in this world loves a child as much as we love our own. In this, we're all united. Before I go on to take questions, I must acknowledge that sustainability work, and it is hard work, is nothing if not collaborative. So many, many thanks to students, colleagues, former students, alumni, family, and friends. DePauw appreciates the ways that you support our school and the ways that you support the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Pope. We'll go ahead and open up the floor, I think, to Q&A. I'll go ahead and start with one of our online questions, and if anybody in the audience has any questions, please let me know, and I'll bring a mic around to be able to go ahead and do that as well. But we first have Bill Pope, class of 69, and he asks, please describe the role economic growth and wealth generation play in sustainable processes.
Excellent. Hi, I like the last name on that. Appreciate your question very much, Bill, because I think that there's misunderstanding. Sometimes there's misunderstanding about the connection between sustainability and the economy. And it's really critical to realize that economic prosperity is one of the pillars of sustainability. A sustainable world isn't going to be possible when people don't have the ability to support themselves, however we might define that. And so with respect to economic growth, I think that one of the challenges is to really, this is a cliche term, but to think outside of the box and to reconsider what has been sort of classic use of resources, and balance that against the kinds of ways that we want to live in the future. What does wellness mean? What is a good life? And how does the work that we do in human endeavors, how does that support the economy? I believe that that's growth. I believe that innovation, especially innovation, is necessary. We don't have sustainability now. We are not a sustainable society. And so therefore, we need to figure out how to address that and how to get there. And that's going to require ingenuity. And I think ingenuity has always been the backbone of economic growth.
Okay. I'll go ahead and move on to another question here from James Rowlett, class of 54. He asks, how conclusive is the science of climate change? Do you see some benefits of a slowly warming world?
Oh, excellent question. Thank you for that. So sometimes we get confused about the nature of science, and it's frustrating, and I apologize because I have a training in science, because there will always be, for all questions, scientific uncertainty. That's part of what science is. However, in the case of climate change, there isn't, when I say uncertainty, what I'm talking about is what is the precise nature of the ways that infrared energy interacts with carbon dioxide molecules, and details like that. So what I'm trying to get at is there's uncertainty about the specific mechanics of some of these highly technical situations, but the understanding that humans are contributing more carbon to the atmosphere by burning fossil fuels, that is petroleum, gasoline, natural gas, coal, all of those things are sources of carbon that were originally part of our atmosphere 3 million years ago. And what happened is some plant or some animal absorbed that carbon into their body and died. And then when the animal or plant died, it fell into a swamp, and that carbon got stored. And deep inside the earth, it's undergone geologic changes that have turned it into what we're now called fossil fuels. So whether that be coal or petroleum or natural gas. So when humans are taking those wonderful, wonderful, fabulous resources, look at what fossil fuels has empowered us to do, and we take those out of the ground, we introduce more carbon to the atmosphere. It's just a mass balance issue. There's no question about it. And we know that these gases are what are called greenhouse gases. Greenhouse atmospheres and the greenhouse effect is incredibly important. It's what allows life to thrive on this planet. The problem is we're adding carbon at such an unprecedented rate that we don't really know entirely what all of the long-term consequences and changing in weather patterns are going to be. And it's a dangerous experiment because when we talk about a warming world, we're not talking about a couple of degrees difference in the summertime. Yes, that's part of it. What we're talking about is a planet with a fever. And so for the last 100,000 years, the Earth has maintained a viable situation for humans, that intersection between the environment and equity or human initiatives. And I say this, yes, recognizing that there have been climate shifts in the past, the Little Ice Age, the medieval warm period, of course the glaciations themselves. But regardless of all of that, the fluctuations of that over geologic time represent a change of about a degree. And the type of change that we're talking about now are 3, 4, 5, 6 degrees. So like I said, this is a planet with a fever. And what we know about life is resilient. Life will survive. We're not talking about saving the Earth. We're talking about what is fundamentally good for human societies. So are there benefits? I'm sure that there are. I'm sure that there are plenty of benefits, but what the science tells us now is that there are far more harms to human societies, to ecosystems, than probably we care to try to we just don't want to gamble with that. And I should say some climate change is bound to occur because is already occurring and is going to continue to occur because of the carbon that we've been releasing into the atmosphere for the last 150 years. That has a long life. It's going to be up there for a while. So while it's important to be resilient and to respond to this change, to think about adaptation, it's also important to make a really quick switch away from using carbon as soon as possible because we don't want there to be more.
Thank you for that really thorough and thoughtful response.
Yeah, that was really long.
No, that was perfect. Then we have Cameron Huffman from the class of 2011.
Hey, Cam!
He says he says he's a pre-university educator, and he's taken a keen interest in increasing his students' climate literacy. So in that, he wonders, what's the most effective strategy you use to train your students to be critical consumers of information? And with that, how could he work to engage students so we can train them how to think, not what to think?
Oh, yeah. Hi, Cam. It's nice to hear from you. Such a great question. And one of the things that I think is that student learning is, classroom learning is a shared enterprise. And so as students are learning information, faculty members, teachers are learning students. And so it becomes in a relationship. And the information that is shared and developed becomes a relationship as well. And so therefore, I think it's really important to try to get to know students. And I think that I'm sure that you do. In terms of the critical literacy or critical consumers of information, how to think, that's a tough one. That is in fact the goal of a liberal arts education, is to become critical consumers of information. And the ways that we go about it at DePauw might not work quite as well at in a high school situation, but students need to be exposed to lots of different kinds of ideas, but not to stop in that moment of just hearing an idea, but need to re-articulate it, say, what do they think it means? How does one idea relate to another idea? What are the critics of the idea? What are the supporters of the idea? How do they all come together? There's a text that we use in our first year seminar now that may be appropriate for high schoolers, and that is called They Say, I Say. My students are laughing right now because they're reading it. And that is really about the engagement with, the critical engagement with information. So that's what has to happen, is that the students need to critically engage. Now, in order for that to happen, I think it's curiosity. I think it's connecting to what students care about. And I think every student cares. Every student cares about something. And so it's just finding that spark and connecting with that spark to a greater world.
I have a question here in the audience.
Thank you. Thanks for your talk.
Thanks.
So this was very needed for me because, we can't live in the time we do and not be profoundly depressed about changes in terms of environmental policy, particularly in the U.S. context. Just give me the lowdown. How bad are these reversals in domestic policy on climate change, very hard fought, for a place like DePauw? On the one hand, I was very heartened, saying, this kind of work is going on, and hopefully it'll go on. But what are the implications of these changes for our thinking on sustainability on our campus?
Yeah, I think that's a really excellent question. Thank you for that, Deepa. we don't live in a bubble. We are, in fact, very connected to what's happening in the United States, in Indiana, in the United States, in the global world, and there are some very challenging changes to our understanding of environmental regulation right now. I think two things. First of all, and this relates back to Cameron's question, actually, is for students, not to tell students what to think, but how to think. And it relates to an idea that Annie Leonard called citizen muscles. And so it's really critical that students, so as you think about how to think about it on our campus, students just need to know what's happening. They need to have access to the decisions, and of course the classes that you teach about political science, about the current events, because there's so much news and so much overwhelm, information overwhelm right now that it's sort of hard to shift through this. And so that's why I think that the college classroom is a way to kind of slow down and to check in with that. So first of all, students need to be informed, and then they need to not just sit as sort of passive recipients of information, but to engage with it somehow. And so that's why programs like the Environmental Fellows or the Sustainability Leadership, one of the Sustainability Leadership programs, one of the groups in that program is called DEP, the DePauw Environmental Policy Project. And students actually learn about the bills that are before, mostly it's about Indiana law, but also looking at national issues. And right now, just last week, actually, one of our groups went to meet with Senator Donnelly in Indiana. So I think that students connecting and engaging with the political process, and this is not promoting one party over another, but just saying, what is the information, what do I care about, and how do I want to connect that with how I'm learning?
Another audience question here.
So in class, we have been studying quite a lot about feedback loop and how global warming can be explained in those feedback loops. And we've kind of been depressed about saying that it's always a positive feedback loop, that it just go in a circle. And if you don't take initiative, it's hard to get out. So I was thinking the same way, if we can apply the same concept to understand sustainability in terms of those connection, and whether there are two, like both positive and negative feedback loop that can exist at the same time. And
Yeah.
if you can give some example, that would be great.
Sure. Okay. Well, so just to make sure that everybody that may have not been in systems thinking classes recently is on the same page. Positive feedbacks are changes to a system that promote more change. So an example of that is ice on different, the global ice caps. So ice reflects sunlight, but land absorbs heat. And so when the ice melts, land absorbs more heat, which raises the temperature, which allows for more ice to melt, and so therefore the process continues. So in other words, positive feedbacks in environmental systems have very negative consequences. Negative feedbacks, on the other hand, are a little bit like a thermostat that there's a change, and the response to the change is something that sets it back to the original position. So with a thermostat, it starts to get warmer, the air conditioning kicks on and cools a room, or it starts to get cooler, the heat turns on to warm a room. So the situation is maintained. So what we're talking about is stability and turbulence, essentially. And positive feedback is about turbulence, and negative feedbacks are about stability. And so one of the ideas in resilience thinking is that the world is constantly going to have upheavals and changes, and that one of the ways to respond to this is through adaptation and being resilient. So I think that those are sustainability is consistent with that idea about being flexible, about ingenuity, thinking creative, creatively. Now, those aren't the global systems. You want to probably think about the physical systems more. Yes?
Just kind of like between economy and environmental, is it always like economy goes up, environmental goes down?
Yeah, excellent, excellent. So then that relates to the first question, Bill Pope, who asked about economic growth and sustainability. And so we think about economic growth as being based some people think about economic growth exclusively in terms of resource exploitation. But the development of services or the development of ideas is also very much an element of economic growth. And so when it comes to sustainability and feedback, I think that when we fail to recognize the harm that's happening, we're degrading our planet such that we degrade our ability to thrive as people. So that's basically kind of ruining our life support system. And all of that has a very positive feedback in a negative way. But what sustainability is about, and the aims of sustainability, the goals of sustainability, are in fact to have that negative feedback. And so in order to recognize what kinds of activities are destructive, such that we can come up with alternatives, because humans are smart. We're adaptive, we're resilient, we're ingenious, really. And while there might be finite limits on the planet in terms of space, in terms of resources, I don't think that there's any limit on human creativity or human ingenuity. And that's the really exciting news and the hopeful news for sustainability. And so it's unfortunate that we have positive and negative feedbacks, because the positive is a bad thing and the negative is a good thing. But I would say the negative feedback on sustainability is just the human capacity to imagine. And more than anything, what I want for DePauw students is to think about how they don't have to inherit the world that you don't have to continue the world that you've inherited. That you have the capacity to be a leader, to be a change maker, and we can just look at that over time. So I'm not going to tell people what to think. I'm going to tell people, what do you want? What do you value? What do you care about when you think about your basic humanity? And how do you want that to be a part of a system and humanity that we all share?
Another question in the audience over here.
Hi, thanks so much. I am interested in hearing you talk more about the new developments that are coming our way via the campus farm, and in particular what this has to do with students' education here and our goals, our newly articulated mission at DePauw, and what this kind of activity on the farm, which is really rather a physical, hands-on, dirty jeans kind of work, how is this connected to the curriculum, and how might it become more so?
Excellent, thank you. There are endless possibilities, and something that I'm really excited about and grateful to the ULLEM family for is that, along with the gift that's going to help create the fields and build the building, there's also funds available for programming. And so one of the things that we are planning next summer is a faculty development workshop in which I'm going to invite probably 20 faculty members to consider that very question. So one of the wonderful features of food is that you don't have to embrace sustainability to just like food, and I hope that through that vehicle, something that is of such profound cultural significance, that we come together and recognize our commonality as opposed to our differences. Now that's not those are my ideas, but I think that when faculty are given sort of the space to think about these things, one of the things that we have is we have a very passionate faculty who really love their disciplines, who really love what it is that they think about and do. And then they translate that to students. And then, and this is the really exciting parts, and then students translate, or offer feedback, and there becomes an exchange and a dialogue. Now, all of that's rather abstract. I think that there are a number of sort of specific ways that we can look at this. And in fact, there's a lot of literature that talks about how physical engagement, the actual physical movement, pulling weeds, planting plants, hoeing, all of those activities actually have cognitive benefits, that you will remember information more when you are physically engaged as opposed to sitting in a classroom. And so that's one of the ways. And then, of course, there will be opportunities for theory. There'll be opportunities for experimentation, bringing things back to the lab, products, whether it be artistic or literature, writings that come from being at the farm. So it's not just about geology and the soil or biology and the plants, but in fact, it's really at the core of the liberal arts mission. As we think about science, social science, arts, humanities, the farm will connect to all three. All four.
I'll go ahead and list another online question here. We have Richard Moore from class of 72. Mm-hmm. He asks, does DePauw have plans to join any national sustainability programs such as NCSE or participate in national campus sustainability evaluations such as AASHE?
Yes, DePauw is a member. DePauw is a member of ASHE, the Association for the Advancement of Sustainability in Higher Ed. We've been members for, a decade or so before the office was actually formed. And students, Anthony, other faculty members regularly attend and present at the ASHE National. So the AASHE acronym is ASHE, and we regularly present at that conference, as well as use the information available through the ASHE website on in-class projects. And so the other element for the National Center for Science and the Environment, National Science, NCSE, is, I'm sorry, I just blanked on what the acronym is right now. Science and the Environment, National Center for Science and the Environment, NCSE, we have participated in that in the past and gone to the Council for Environmental Deans and Directors. I think that's a wonderful, wonderful program and has excellent resources. I make use of the resources that come from those conferences on a regular basis. Right now, we're not members of that affiliation, and the reality is we just have, this is a choice that Academic Affairs has to make as we try to think about how are funds spent in connection with national organizations and how are funds spent in support of the academic opportunities for students. And so we are associated with ASHE right now, but not NCSE.
Well, unfortunately, I think we actually are just about out of time, but please join me in thanking Professor Pope for coming tonight and sharing such an impactful lecture with us, and so many thoughtful answers came out of that Q&A. I feel like that really helped develop a little bit more information on top of everything else, so thank you for all those thoughtful responses as well.
Thank you.